and stand light for the skin. When sunlight falls on your skin, system to generate vitamin D. This is the basic understanding or the basic first effect of photobiostimulation or photomodulation of the cellular cycles or the cellular action. The mechanism is already there in our body. The moment sunlight falls on the skin, we start producing vitamin. Cellular therapy is as similar to this to understand. The sunlight also is used by plants for photosynthesis, converting carbon dioxide to glycogen energy and releasing oxygen in return. So when we look at the visible spectrum of light, the visible spectrum of light varies from 500 nanometers to 1100 nanometers. The basic property of this wavelength or this spectrum of light is that it is not absorbed either by melanin or hemoglobin or water. So within this bypass the melanin hemoglobin and reach the cells. We call this as having an optic to reach. So this light can reach the mitochondria in the cells. The endoplasmic reticulum on the mitochondria, go back to our 12th standard classes. The small dots you used to draw on the endoplasmic reticulum, the ribosomes on the endoplasmic reticulum are the photosensitive receptors. These function as the photosensitive receptors. And light falling on these receptors then gives you the photostimulation or photobiomodulation of the cellular activities. Apart from this light being used for stimulating hair growth, it is also used for pain control, for wound healing, for reducing inflammation, for nerve regeneration, for osseointegration of the implants or the implants getting integrated into the bones. There are various other applications. And there is paradoxical hypertrichosis. Increased growth is surrounding ensues in the surrounding area. So it's about 0.6 to 10% depending on the skin type and the hair type. So delivery of low fluence light between 1 to 10 joules per square centimeter or a low power around 3 milliwatts per square centimeter to cause follicular stem cell and differentiation, which leads to this paradoxical hypertrichosis. It's a subtherapeutic injury caused by the laser, which releases factors to induce follicular angiogenesis. It raises the heat shock proteins such as HSP27, which regulate cell growth and cell differentiation. So we are seeing this in practice. Now let's get to the temperature and the effects of various temperatures on the cells in the body. Commonly, people will ask you whether using this laser is going to cause burns. There are two kinds of lasers. The common laser you use is light amplification of stimulated and stimulation of emitted radiation, that is the LACR, the acronym for the laser. But this is a cold laser, or this is a low level laser light or low level laser therapy. It's called as the LLLT. This is only 0.5 watts or half a watt or intensity. The power of this light is not important. The wavelength or the frequency is important, which allows the light to reach inside the cells. So just to brush up or to review the effects of heat. So two kinds of lasers. Lasers can be heat lasers, which are ablative. They have energy close to 24 or more watts per square centimeter. An energy of 24 watts per square centimeter can cause second-degree burns. energy of 13 watts per square centimeter can cause first degree burns. When you're doing superficial laser ablation, you're using such energies to remove the upper layer of the cells. And low energy photons can be absorbed by the cell organelle, resulting in photoactivation or photobiostimulation. So temperature less than 40 degrees this is called as athermal or atraumatic effect. If you go higher than between 40 if you go further more than 58 degrees there is the tissues, and at 200 degrees there is carbonization of the tissues. So this is just to understand the range and the heat produced and what effect it has. But the laser we are using is a cold light, and it is much lower than 40 degrees centigrade. Now, Andre Mester in 1967, a Hungarian physician, wanted to study carcinogenic effects of laser light on the backs of mice. So he shaved the backs of the mice and exposed them to low intensity laser according to the weight of the mice. Of course, if you put high intensity laser, we don't want to burn the mice. So he used very low intensity laser according to the weight and the calculation of the epithelium and skin thickness of the mice. 694 nanometer ruby laser. And found that the hair growth on and NASA produced the LED. This NASA LED was a light that was less divergent. It had a stable output of photons. It was not exactly monochromatic like laser, but it was quasi-chromatic, very close in frequency, not much variation. It was not exactly columnated beam like a laser light, exactly parallel, but slightly divergent. And then the US photobiologist Kendrick Smith introduced this low-level light therapy into biology and medical management and brought in the concept of LLLT. So the NASA LED, which was created by Harry Wallen in 1998, Professor Harry Wallen's gift to us is the LED, and this was the time when the LED lasers came into being and we could get the new therapy. A lot of studies were done on this therapy. The most important thing we want to know about this therapy is its biphasic response. There is an Arndt-Schulz curve of biphasic response. So when you start giving this light to the cells, up till the level of 2 joules is crossed, there is no effect on the cells. Between 2 joules to 4 joules, the energy dose starts showing some photobiostimulation and effectiveness. The moment this crosses beyond 4 joules and gets to somewhere close to 5 joules, the energy, the effect suddenly drops, and not only drops, the benefit reverses. So instead of beneficial effect, you get non-beneficial effect or the result of this effect. This is called the biphasic response. Very good article by Hong in 2009, which has studied the biphasic response in LLLT. So what should be the optimal energy you want to deliver on the scalp? The surface area of an average scalp is 250 square centimeters. For a surface area of 250 square centimeters, if you want to deliver 5 milliwatts each for 30 minutes, you require 80 LED diodes in the device. That will deliver just a little more than 2 joules per square centimeter, which is the optimal power. And wearing this for 30 minutes will still keep the effect within the sweet spot where it gives you the benefit but does not exceed the dose for reversal of the benefit or for the biphasic response. In our clinic, we are using this energy or this LED helmet, the hair growth light, once in 3 days or on an average 2 times a week. Many manufacturers recommend that it should be used every day or 4 to 5 times a week. Mainly these studies or these manufacturers are from Western population. They are dealing with Caucasian skin, which is fair. White skin will reflect light, darker skin will absorb more light. So we don't require it 4 or 5 times a week. Once or twice a week of this therapy for 25 to 30 minutes, according to the number of diodes and according to the duration of the therapy decided by the manufacturer of that unit is enough. Most of these units are on auto stop, so you don't have to check for the time. After the unit delivers therapy for its required energy level to be met, it shuts off automatically. So let's come to studies and clinical trials. LED light was studied, extensive studies carried out, and the application for safety submitted by Lexington International of USA. FDA found that LED light is within the visible spectrum range. It was deemed a non-significant risk by the US FDA and was cleared for human use on 18th January 2007. The FDA clearance is for safety of using the light in humans. The FDA clearance is not for its efficacy. FDA approved doesn't mean it's approved for hair growth. FDA approved means approved to be safe for using in the patients without any problem. This needs to be understood clearly. Luo, Sun, and Zhang then published a study of LLLT light on reactive oxygen species, homeostasis, expression of IGF-1 and TGF-beta. The study was done in skeletal muscle during the repair process of the skeletal muscle. It shows reduced scar formation, enhanced activity of superoxide dismutase, and decreased muscle melandialdehyde levels. This favors hair growth. So though the studies are not carried out on exactly on hair follicles, but modulation of homeostasis, reduction of oxidative stress, stimulation of insulin like growth factor, all are in favor of hair growth. What is not in favor of hair growth is upregulation of TGF-beta. The TGF-beta upregulation is controlled by the frequency of light you use. So for hair growth, you prefer the lower range of frequency of lights, which is just around 650 to 720 nanometers. The frequency going higher is not in our favor. So this was understood by the initial experiments. The effects caused by LLT or the low level therapy are seen to be on nerve conduction, on capillary dilatation, biochemical effects, bioelectric effects, and energetic effects. It increases the production of ATP in the cells. It releases nitric oxide out of the cells. This nitric oxide has got angiogenetic potential, so it creates more blood vessels in the surroundings. It reduces the reactive oxygen species. It induces fibroblast, collagen, and elastin synthesis. So it's going to create stronger hair follicles. Upregulates mast cell degranulation, macrophage activity, so better immunity. Upregulates keratinocyte activity, controls opiate and non-opiate pain, increases RNA DNA synthesis, increases enzyme production, and as we just saw, increases the superoxide dismutase activity. Bioelectric effects involve electromotive action on the membrane and ion transport mechanisms. Bioenergetic effects are compared to be somewhat similar to acupuncture. So this light has been used on the meridian points by acupuncture specialists to stimulate the acupuncture points and treat their patients. This is the value or the biological effects of this photomodulation. The mechanism of action as far as concerned with our application for hair growth has been studied in detail and described very well by the Wellman Center of Photomedicine. This can be seen on their website. The biomedicallaser.org is their website, published in April 2006. What does it show? It shows that the LLLT light achieves photodissociation of inhibitory nitric oxide from cytochrome oxidase. Cytochrome oxidase is the mitochondrial enzyme respiratory chain in the cells, which can be blocked or inactivated by nitric oxide. The LLLT light exposure causes separation of this nitric oxide from the respiratory chain, improving the efficiency of the respiratory chain. It increases ATP formation. The photodissociated nitric oxide, as I just previously told you, also helps in photodissociation of intracellular nitrolyzed hemoglobin and myoglobin, improving the efficiency of hemoglobin and myoglobin as well. And the nitric oxide, when is released out of the cell, allows more oxygen to diffuse into the cell. Plus, this nitric oxide in the extracellular tissue has an angiogenetic effect. Modulation of the reactive oxygen species response to oxidative stress is enhanced. There is induction of transcription factors that like nuclear factor kappa B, activation of hypoxia factor, promoting protein synthesis and cell proliferation and cell migration, which are in favor of new hair growth. The mechanism of LLLT has been compared to minoxidil. Minoxidil also acts through the nitric oxide mechanism. LLLT also has been recently found to improve the vascular endothelial growth factor and regulates the metalloproteins in the extracellular matrix, reducing inflammation and improving the immune response. And VEGF is one of the growth factors that improves growth of the hair follicles. Tissue cultures have shown 4 peaks of DNA production, one between 614 to 624 nanometers, one between 668 to 684, third between 751 to 772, and the last peak between 813 to 846 nanometers. The range most suitable for us is between 650 to 730 nanometers. Data on tachyphylaxis of the low-level light therapy is not available. Means if you keep on using this therapy, whether the therapy gradually becomes lesser effective or you have to increase the dose or frequency. It's done or it's required in some of the drugs, but I don't think it's required for the low-level light therapy, and there is no data available on tachyphylaxis. Though we did an extensive search, there are no studies based to favor or to counter the effect of tachyphylaxis. Now, a lot of randomized control trials have been conducted. In 2003, conducted a trial of male and female hair loss patients using 655 nanometer device on alternate days for 24 weeks and reported improved hair growth in the vertex, the temporal hair count, both in and women. Levitt in 2009 did a double-blind sham device control study on LLLT. It was a multi-centric trial having 110 male pattern hair loss patients, no female patients in this study. Again, using 655 nanometer light 3 times a week for 26 weeks, showing increase in terminal hair density, hair regrowth, control of hair loss, thicker or better hair diameter, better scalp and better body and shine of the hair. Lanzafem, again in 2013, did a double-blind randomized control trial in male androgenetic alopecia using the helmet device, having 21 5 milliwatt lasers and 30 non-laser quality, non-laser class LED lights. This was a mixed device having 21 laser class LEDs and 30 non-laser class LEDs. 25 minutes alternate days for 16 weeks, showing 35% increase in hair growth, control of telogen effluvium within 4 to 8 weeks, but initial activation of telogen effluvium was reported in this particular study. Now, in this study, what we need to note is some of the sources used are laser grade LEDs, but the light emitted by the laser grade LEDs is propagated and further spread by using normal LEDs along with the laser grade LEDs. This was the first study where this point was mentioned. Gaminase in 2014 did a multicentric randomized sham control device trial. This is like a placebo control study. So you have a sham device that does not have any laser, is only a light, normal light, not even LED, and you have a proper LLLT device, which are being controlled at multiple centers as a randomized double-blind study. So you don't know whether the device you are using to treat is a sham device or a real LLLT device. So in this study, 128 males, 141 females, 3 times a week for 26 weeks, reported increased hair counts, improvement of hair loss, improved thickness and fullness of hair. Various kinds of laser devices are available, and we are always in a dilemma which one to choose. So the basic device that came first in the market was the laser comb. Disadvantage with the laser comb is you need to hold it in one place for at least 1.5 minutes for the laser light to penetrate into the skin, reach the follicle, and start giving you some benefit. Commonly, patients buy the laser comb and start combing their hair with it, and it doesn't work. Doesn't work that way. When it was found it is necessary to hold this device in one place, the manufacturer introduced a small buzzer after 4 seconds. The buzzer after 4 or 5 seconds is of no use. You will have to hold it in one place for nearly 8 to 10 buzzers, at least more than 30 to 40 seconds for it to work. So if the patients understand this and use it accordingly, then definitely this device would work. It gives radiation to small area of scalp at a time. So you have to keep on using it with partial overlap, moving 1 inch backwards. You start from the front, keep on moving 1 inch backwards as you go from front to back. Then you can use one side by side. And overall, moving this device on the scalp should last for at least 18 to 20 minutes. Then you have delivered adequate energy to the scalp and it will be beneficial. So initial failures or loss of faith, loss of interest in the laser device was because people did not know how to use the device, how much energy is required, and what is the best way to get the results. Later on, you have got devices with 52 diodes, with 82 diodes, with 140 diodes, and 240 diodes, 300 diodes. I think around 82 diodes is ideal. This completes the therapy in a slightly reasonable time of 20 to 25 minutes and gives you the required concentration of energy per square centimeter on the scalp, which is just a little above 2 joules, which is the minimum requirement. And it doesn't exceed the energy, even if you're wearing it for completing the cycle for 20 or 25 minutes. You have got devices that are on a stand and have got a large helmet which comes down on the patient's head. Patient sits in a chair with the device on the mounted on a stand on the back of the chair. So these are for professional devices or for clinics where you can create a good impression on the patient that you are using a sophisticated device. There are also laser devices for personal use. Now recently, apart from the helmets, you have laser caps with a rechargeable battery. You can recharge the battery, keep it in your pocket and wear it on the head. Go for a walk for 20-25 minutes. Within that 20-25 minutes, your laser cycle is over. And this can be easily done. So patient compliance with these devices now is better. Now, whatever we do with this laser therapy or with the laser light, remember we require three things to grow hair: stimulation of the follicle, providing for the growth of the follicle, and maintaining good scalp hygiene. Stimulation of the follicle can be done with the laser device or by applying minoxidil or by applying Capexil, Epigenin, whatever method you want to follow, or giving growth factor injections or doing PRP is only the first step required for hair growth, which is stimulation of the scalp and the hair follicles. Step number 2 is when these follicles have an environment favorable for cell division, they want to grow and proliferate, they require the building blocks for hair growth. If you do not provide the building blocks, you're only pushing and pushing the cells without any support. They will fail. Sometimes it would work for a little while as long as there are good nutritional stores in your body and the nutrition can be spared for rapidly dividing cells. The metabolism in the cells of the hair follicle is compared to bone marrow and intestinal epithelium. They divide at a very fast rate and they consume energy and nutrients at an extremely high rate. So unless you make provision for this with good nutritional support, you're only doing a half-hearted treatment where you're doing only step 1, is only pushing. It's like trying to start a car that fails to start. You're only pushing the car. There is no petrol battery in the car. How do you expect it to start? So step number 1 is where the laser is useful. Step number 2 is you have to combine this laser therapy with a well-planned program of using antioxidants, iron, calcium, amino acids, B complex, biotin, omega-3, vitamin C to stimulate, carry out the stimulation and convert this stimulation into hair growth. Then you follow scalp hygiene. Scalp hygiene also improves with exposure to laser light. The formation and exfoliation of the cells, formation of dandruff is reduced. Your scalp flora is better. And the blood flow to the scalp or perfusion of the scalp is better. Exposing the scalp to laser light improves the blood flow and oxygenation in the scalp. Now we know that on the wall, occipital wall area of the scalp, the hair loss initially starts over there. One of the theories applicable in this area is the curvature of the scalp or the bone itself and the skin stretched over this curved scalp or the calvarium causes low blood flow, low oxygenation in this area. Also, the blood flow to the scalp comes from the periphery towards the center. It's a centripetal blood flow. So there is a watershed area created in the mid zone of the scalp and the occipital wall area. We always knew this, that there is a problem of low blood flow oxygenation in this area. We never knew how can we improve the blood flow oxygenation in this area. Today you have a therapy. You start low-level laser light therapy for these patients. It attracts more blood flow, better oxygenation in this area. And once the blood flow oxygenation in this area is better, you support it with good nutrients and a scalp care program. You can ensure you get results within 2 to 4 months. And you get consistently good results. 4 months is your 1 trilogen cycle. After initial 4 to 6 months, if the result is good, the laser can be discontinued. Only the nutrition and the scalp care can be followed for some more days. That also can be discontinued after 8 to 10 months. Watch the hair. If the damaging factors which are causing the weakness of the follicles and the hair to fall continue, this hair might fall again. Not because your therapy is wrong or your therapy is weak is because the damage that you corrected with the therapy made the hair follicles strong are again being converted to become weak. So because they weaken again, you might require the therapy again. It's a harmless therapy. It gives you wellness, good health, hair growth. It's a low dose nutrition therapy along with low dose laser, can be done again. So this is the way you will explain the therapy to your patients and use it in your practice. After hair transplant, when we have used laser therapy, we start the therapy within 10 days after the transplant. It gives better separation of the scabs. It gives better epithelialization, better healing of the transplanted area, better healing in the donor area. The hair growth starts early at 2.5 to 3 months instead of 4 to 5 months. And you end up having good, robust, thick hair regrowth. So that's all, folks, that I want to talk about the LLLT laser therapy. Very nice spending time with all of you on this Sunday morning. I will stop my webinar here, and I would request you to send any questions if possible for the next few minutes. We have got another roughly 8 to 10 minutes of time to answer the questions. If I cannot catch all your questions, we will note them and these will be replied in the group. So everybody will get an answer to whatever questions are being asked. So now questions are welcome. So laser therapy is effective in grades of hair loss up to grade 5. When the grade of hair loss goes beyond grade 5, you will require a hair transplant. But you can precondition the hair, prepare it for the transplant by using your laser and nutritional therapy before the transplant, and then continuing the same therapy or support after the transplant. Now, this is not a standalone therapy. It will work to a very minimal benefit if you use only laser therapy. Depending on the merits of the case, you have to combine this laser therapy along with the nutritional therapy and scalp care. Where this therapy helps me in my practice is when people are afraid of injections. They don't want to take PRP injections or they don't want to take growth factor injections. They don't want to come repeatedly for painful treatments. They want something that can carry on the benefit. Then this benefit is going to carry on and delivering hair growth for a longer time. And the dose delivered by your laser device should be just below 5 joules or just around 5 joules per square centimeter. If you're having a laser device that gives you 6 joules, the dose is slightly higher and might cause a biphasic reaction. Your manufacturer might have incorporated a slightly higher delivery to make up for the distance of the laser source from the scalp, which reduces or causes loss of energy by the time the energy is delivered into scalp, or the incident angle of light falling on the scalp. That also changes the therapy. So maybe your manufacturer is trying to incorporate something for the losses and the energy is slightly high. This energy or the laser therapy does not interfere with any other therapy. This penetrates to hardly half to 1 millimeter from the skin. You can give this therapy before doing a PRP or immediately after doing a PRP. Is no problem. And using 20 minutes twice a week, that's right. This should be a good frequency to follow. This will improve blood flow oxygenation to the scalp and give you better hair growth. So the therapy does not interfere with any other treatments or therapies that are going on. The energy is finished within half to 1 millimeter from the scalp. More number of diodes do not always mean better outcome. The number of diodes should be optimum. What I feel optimum is 82 diodes if you're giving therapy for 25 to 30 minutes. Next is 242 diodes if you want to finish the therapy within 12 to 15 minutes. So having more number of diodes, just make sure that the energy is delivered. Delivering higher energy is never the aim, because if you deliver the energy which is too high, this is going to cause a biphasic response and you will lose the benefit. So ideal, I would suggest, would be 82 diodes.